So there was actual non-Super Bowl news this week.
It's hard to believe.
It really is.
Not much non-Super Bowl news.
No,
not interesting Super Bowl non-Super Bowl news.
No.
But news nonetheless. Some stuff happened.
There's some hearings this week.
Some hearings.
It was a real hearing-heavy week.
Yeah, we've been having a lot of hearings recently.
Hearings right and left.
God, it's like, think about the wasted time.
Yeah.
The compliments that were...
Well,
there weren't that many compliments at Hagel's hearing.
No, and now that we didn't really change the filibuster at all, we may as well just be having hearings all the time because they're not going to be able to successfully vote on anything.
That's true.
Yeah.
We might as well just change it to a solely hearings-based system in which we just hear things and then don't do anything about them.
We hear them and then make no decisions on them.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
So Chuck Hagel's confirmation hearing was this week, and it was sort of eventful.
It was.
Chuck and his old buddies were not getting along. He used to be BFFs with McCain.
Well, here's where that...
I assumed that him and Lindsey Graham were friends if McCain and him were friends.
Here's where that all went haywire. The Surge.
Yeah. Yeah, it was all about the Surge.
It was all about the Surge because they were like all besties, and Hagel sort of had voted for every terrible Republican sort of defense thing that you could think to vote on.
Yeah.
I mean, he voted for
he was really going for it.
He voted for Afghanistan. He voted for Iraq. He voted for every sort of defense budget increase that you possibly could vote on.
He was a man who loved defense spending.
He loved all things about America.
Spending money on defense.
And
or going to
blowing
unnecessary
up other
wars.
countries.
Yeah,
he was
all
over
it.
Those things.
Yeah.
So the fact that he is no longer friends with John McCain, I think, says something more about John McCain, really, than it does anybody else and Lindsey Graham, because they have obviously continued to go batshit crazy on all things defense, and Hagel sort of is still about as far to the right as any person could be.
Well, I mean, in his opening statements, he was talking about how we should be using military power to, like, basically solve all the world's problems.
Yeah, he's not
as if the U.S. military should be just walking around intervening into any situation that...
Well, that's what he thinks.
That's yeah.
I mean,
he's on board with that.
Yes, absolutely.
But the questioning that he got was real crazy.
It was crazy. John Kerry didn't get any of this questioning.
No,
and John Kerry is a sort of notorious Kerry
came to the Senate for the first time as an anti-war activist.
Right.
That's what he did before being a senator.
Right. And so here comes Chuck Hagel, who is actually for blowing up the world.
Right. Exactly.
Basically. And he just got lambasted.
John McCain was not having any of it.
No.
And not just John McCain. Claire McCaskill was giving an interview to MSNBC afterwards and said, I think that Chuck Hagel is more comfortable asking questions than answering them because it did not go well.
His reviews were not good. No.
It did not go well. And part of the reason it didn't go well, though, is because he got, like, a really contentious series of questions.
Yes.
The other part is that he didn't handle them the way that you would hope that someone who had experience being at these hearings would.
He was sort of like... He seemed tentative and was sort of like sheepishly answering these questions.
Exactly. He did, though, the one sort of like area in which we have to give him credit is that John McCain asked him whether he was right or wrong in opposing the Surge, which is McCain and Lindsey Graham were both like obsessing about this fucking Surge and the Iraq War, which sort of just shows how out of touch they are.
Well,
but McCain asked him to answer as a yes or no question. And Hagel was sort of like, well, it's not a yes or no answer. I'm not going to give you a yes or no answer. And this went back and forth. And John McCain was like, yes or no. And Hagel was like, no, I'm not giving you the answer. And he would be like, yes or no. So Hagel finally said, it's more complicated than that. I'll defer to that judgment. I'll defer that judgment to history. As to the comment I made about the most dangerous foreign policy decisions since Vietnam, that was not just about the Surge, but the overall choice of going to war in Iraq. That particular decision made on the Surge, he still backs up because he made the choice. But he said that the whole war in Iraq was the most fundamentally bad, dangerous decision since Vietnam. Which was, I think, the most candid we've heard him on that issue, at least recently.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting. I was watching Real Time with Bill Maher last night, and he was just sort of like McCain and these guys who were sort of like these old school military guys, sort of like lost Vietnam, whether they want to admit it or not. We've really sort of lost Afghanistan in the sense that what there was to sort of like win or lose. You can't really point to having won that. And the only thing that they can sort of hold on to, like, having quasi-worked was the Surge.
Yeah. And
so to have somebody sort of say that it didn't, or to sort of just say that the whole thing was bad, really just like gets under their skin more than anything else. Yeah. Just because it's really the only thing over the past, 50 years in terms of war that they can sort of point to having vaguely worked.